We are now on episode 3, and I now have a surplus of metal. Now I've already smelted copper and iron. I'm waiting for the thorium and the cobalt to smelt, so in the meantime, I head to a nearby Quebec village. I actually did not know it was this close to my house, but it is. It's kind of hidden in this bunch of trees right here, and they are friendly. You can even find a vendor who will sell you recipes as well as survival materials. I take some of their items, which they seem to be okay when you take random things. Destroying and taking things, on the other hand, like this chicken coop, they don't really like that. They will come running in alert, but they can't really do much to you. They forget that you are a thief and just kind of stare at you for a solid couple of seconds, giving you a threatening look. But, you know, if they try attacking you, you're just gonna wipe them all out and genocide their village, so they let you take their chicken coop, and I head back home, where I now need to expand out my little area with the chickens. That way they have plenty of room to walk around, as well as get into their chicken coop. Though I will have learned later on that you do want to put the chicken coop more in the center of the enclosure, because they can run up the side of the chicken coop and then climb over the fence. So that's something you're going to have to watch out for when you make your own. I also at first didn't understand how the chicken coop was supposed to work or how they would give eggs. Essentially, you just put the chicken coop in there, they go inside every so often, and every couple of days you will find a package inside which will have eggs. Now, we do plan on going on a couple of different adventures in this episode, but first things first, I need to clear out my inventory, and I also need to go deposit some of the memories at the goddess statue. Now then, all the chores are done, it is time to go on an adventure, and the first place we go to is going to be another fire biome. Now, the one that was next to my house was very small. This one in particular is a large landmass, like an entire continent. It's south of the desert region. So once I get up top, I start harvesting what I can to see if I can find any new materials like this right here. I think it's called firewood or fire logs or something, but it's completely own unique item. You also have some buildings that don't really have much in there besides maybe a couple of skeletons, but these skeletons are not that hard to kill. I also found a floating skull, which kind of reminded me of what they're called bubbles in the Legend of Zelda franchise. Why they're called bubbles, I don't know why, they're just floating skulls. But then I continued on where I found a hellhound, or not a hellhound, more like an undead hound. And it actually is kind of creepy, though not as creepy as the zombie cows that can roam this area. There are also zombie chickens and other kind of undead creatures you need to look out for, including wraiths. Now, this biome in particular, as you see, is just a lot of lava crevices, and you have to keep jumping in order to not fall into them. I also found some red crystals, which again, I don't know what crystals are used for. I'm just gathering them as I see them. Now, while you can find regular skeletons, you can also find much stronger ones like these right here. These are the ones that are actually from the fire biome, and they can pack a punch. Now, these are the smaller warrior ones. You can also find other skeletons with other abilities and weapons, as well as boss battle ones, but we'll get into that later. As of right now, I'm opening up the map to see all the different subzones within this landmass, and my target that I want to get to is what looks like a jungle or a swamp or something, because that is an area I've not been to just yet. On the way there, I found this purple building. Now, there really isn't anything inside, so either the spawns were not working, or this is an unfinished, building or plot that will eventually be expanded upon in the future. Really, the only thing I found inside were piranhas within the water, which, as you see here, I see another area that I try to get to, so I jump across only to fall in the water, and then I start to panic because I didn't want to get killed by the piranhas, so I quickly get back up and look back just to see a piranha pass by me. Like, I was that close from getting my ass eaten. Anyway, I try opening up all the boxes. I don't really find much. I didn't find any chests, really, so so again, I think this is an unfinished area, which is why there's also no mobs besides the piranhas. It's still really cool looking, though after a while I start to get bored, and because I wasn't finding much of anything, I wasn't going to go exploring the entire building. So it was time to continue to the jungle area that I saw on the map, which really wasn't too close. I could see it from there. Now, this is one of the mini bosses right here. This is a burnt skeleton Praetorian. Again, he's kind of like a mini boss, not quite a boss, but as you see there, he does a quick dash to you, which luckily I had my shield up for it. His melee attacks hit really hard, so the strategy is not to fight him in melee, and it is best to kite him and fight him with ranged. I didn't do that here because he did such a chunk to me. I kind of panicked and I ran away, though the next time I face him, I will not do that. Anyway, eventually I find a couple of stacks of adamantite ore in the ground, and luckily because the skeleton had not caught up to me, I take that moment and loot it. Now then, I wait a while until it gets a bit brighter out because it was nighttime at the moment, and I find what looks like a giant mushroom. I am now on the outskirts of the jungle section that I wanted to check out. The glowing, I guess, spore areas that you would find in the giant mushroom are actually full of crystal, which is interesting. I loot the crystals, and I also loot a couple of the mushroom chunks, but I don't really know what to do with them. I'm just collecting them, and I also chop down a couple of trees in order to collect some of the ash logs in the area, though ash logs can be found in other parts of the world, so they're not really that rare. What I really need to focus on is gathering more adamantite like this right here, and the best place to find ore is going to be in the caves. So now that I've thoroughly searched the overworld area of the fire biome, it was now time to delve in deep. Now, just like how the other biomes are, where it changes the deeper in you go, as you notice, it starts to get a lot more green underneath the fire biome, which is quite interesting. You would think there would just be another deeper fire or magma chasm below. I also find this crypt full of skeletons. I keep finding these coffins, but they never really have anything of worth in them except for skeletons, which you can defeat really easy even with a weaker weapon. So I continue down into what seems to be turning into a jungle until I find a massive opening with a lot of flying creatures about. This is the dinosaur biome. I don't know if it has an exact name, but this right here is pretty much the endgame zone, at least for right now. This has the strongest enemies and some of the best materials. Now, I was a bit high up, so I turned around to try to find a way down, only to get attacked by one of these undead dogs. Luckily, he went down pretty quick. I also looted up some more cobalt and adamantite, and I started digging down until I found the opening to the dinosaur biome. So a quick hop down and I look around to get my bearings. The last thing I needed was to be chopped down by a T-Rex or a raptor. I find some adamantite and I go to loot it, only to then be attacked by something that poisoned me. I didn't see what it was at first until a giant plant creature came out of the bushes and continued to bite me. With every bite, it took a chunk of my health, and then the poison got the best of me and I pretty much died right there. So yeah, I didn't make it 2 steps into the dinosaur biome without dying to a freaking plant. Anyway, it was time to go and check out some other things on this horse I have. Of course, I'm not going to be keeping the horse, but I find another Quebec village. Instead of a chicken coop, this one has a rabbit area. Of course, it's still using a chicken coop. I don't know what the difference is, but I also needed to trade with the Quebec trader in order to purchase a couple of recipes. I then continued on and I found this giant castle area. There wasn't really much to it. I kind of just breezed past it. But what I was doing was heading west, because while I had been north to the cold area and I had been south to the desert area, I had not been west yet. Though as I traveled, I noticed that I was met with ocean, which means that was the end of my continent. And I didn't really want to go across the ocean just yet, especially because I have not found a way to make a boat. I don't know if it's available. So now I'm going to be heading northwest, which leads back into the cold biome, but I had not been this far west. So I continued where I found a giant iceberg or fjord or something. I wanted to get a new perspective, so I dug my way up by making a little staircase here and climbed up the iceberg. So now I can see around the whole area. Granted, of course, if it wasn't nighttime. Also, the ice is very slippery, so you do have to watch out for that. You also have enemies that can spawn up here, such as saber-toothed tigers, at least the leopard variant, as well as some other creatures. Though, as I got to the edge of the iceberg, I see a giant building down below. I was curious as to what it was. Could be a mausoleum, it could be a type of temple, I don't know. Of course, I get attacked by a demon as I'm trying to heal from the fall damage, so I had to take him out real quick. Luckily, these things are not that hard, they're just really annoying, especially because they spawn so often at nighttime. Though, once I was done with him, I snuck around these skeletons and started to head inside, only to then find a work in progress sign. Yeah, that was a major disappointment. I got jebaited into thinking I found something cool, only to find out it was unfinished. So I head back home, where I have now made an alchemist workbench. This is where you make the teleporters, as well as the ancient gateway. Now, the teleporters work almost exactly like Valheim's teleporters, where you give a name to each of the portals, and then you can tell it where you want to go and teleport between them. Only this one works a little bit better. Now, to make it, I need the Azure Kelp from the bioluminescent forest area. Once I have that in hand and a couple of thorium bars, I am able to start making what I need to get the teleporters up and running, as well as also making the ancient gateway. Now, the ancient gateway is another form of content. First, you need to make a fragment of a specific biome, whether it's the forest, the cold area, or the desert area. I believe there's also one for the fire area. But once you make the fragment or the key, you can put it in there and it will take you into an instanced area. So the easiest one to make is the desert area, which will allow you to be in here for 6 minutes. Now, I didn't know exactly what this was, so I kind of just walked around and gathered stuff. I found a friendly village of the furry race. I also found a couple of crocodiles, which I had not seen in the open world just yet. And I kind of just did what I was doing and collecting stuff. Only then did I find a giant temple later on that had a ton of resources, but also enemies. This is really what you're supposed to be doing when you're in this fragment. You're supposed to find the temple that spawns within and try to get as far up as you can to the top of the tower so you can get as much loot as you can within the time limit. So of course I didn't make it too far up because I didn't know that on this first run. The second time around I do get a little bit higher, but you'll see that later on. But this also tells me what I plan to do. So because there's no true endgame right now, because again this is very early access, 3-year-old build, we're still missing 2 biomes as well as a ton of content that has yet to be released. I think for now, until that newer content is released, my endgame goal for right now is going to be not only doing the gateway key of the fire biome, but also exploring and conquering the dinosaur biome. Now that I've gotten a taste of what's to come, I have a goal and I need to continue to progress in order to reach that goal. So now, once I get to the end of the time limit, it was time to head back home. Now, one thing that I didn't know was if you run out of time, it just sends you back. I thought if you ran out of time, you would get stuck there, and that's not really the case, though that's why I ran through it. Anyway, I'm getting closer to the end of this episode, but first I head back into the deep fire biome, because I am going to be taking on the Fire Steel Golem. These guys are kind of like the big bads of this area, so I managed to make my way down where I defeat one. They basically have the same movesets as all of the other golems, though they can hit a little bit harder. Though if you can survive their whirlwind attack, I think you've pretty much got them. Now, the primary reason I'm down here is for resource gathering, but right now I am full iron. What I need to do is upgrade to the cobalt or thorium. I can just skip cobalt and go to thorium, but it requires a lot of venom sacs. So what I do is I make what I can of the cobalt armor, which I need the shadow weave cloth for, and I make what I can of the thorium armor, which I need a lot of venom sacs for. Now luckily you get venom sacs from pretty much anything like a snake or a spider, so I go to the nearby swamp where there's tons of snakes nearby, and I kill them for a bunch of venom sacs. I grind this out for a good half hour on snakes, as well as some other poisonous creatures within the desert. And right there, yeah, I was getting chased by a skeleton. I saw a running cactus creature, and it was the middle of a sandstorm, so yeah, that was fun. But the large flying bugs in the desert area can also drop venom sacs. Of course, when you're not being chased by them, losing out on your ammo, and then the poison killing you while you hide under a rock. So yeah, again, it took me about half an hour to get all of the venom sacs, but I was eventually able to start upgrading. But anyway, that's going to be the end of this episode. I am going to be progressing into the next episode where I go further into the deep north and start farming up some shadow weave, which includes taking out enemies that I have yet to see in this playthrough. So stay tuned for that. I will see you in the 4th episode, and make sure you check out my full review of Hytale on my main channel, Excaligator Reviews. Until then, I will see you next time.